Hey guys, welcome back to Simply Talk, a show brought to you by Simply Creative. My name is Andres Sarmiento. I'm the host of the show, and I'm joined today with my co-host Jeffrey Creightney. Liz, tell the viewers a bit about yourself.
Hi, my name is Lisbeth Pacheco, and I'm the co-founder of Ethos Coffee Roasters in Lakeland, Florida. And I'm just honored and excited to be talking to you today. It's always great when you see people starting things, and this is the second thing that I've seen you start. So,
Yes, and probably
kudos
not
to
the
you.
last. Probably not the last. Before we get going, Jeffrey, let me tell you a little rundown story of how this became a thing.
Yes, I don't think I'm not the only one that wants to know that because he does post about your coffee a lot. So I'm pretty sure it's really good. But
It's really good.
I might go on a little tangent, my bad. But I'm not a big coffee person myself, but seeing him post about it all the time, it has piqued my curiosity.
If you don't like coffee, you will at least fall in love with their approach on how to bring this to the consumers from farm to table, literally. But I found them through Instagram. I was scrolling on the story feed, and this roaster shop kept popping up as a sponsor. And then eventually, I'm like, you know what? I like coffee. It makes sense. They're from Florida. Let me try. So I tried it. I'm like, wow, this is really good. This is probably the best coffee I've tried. And how we got to get so well acquainted, I'm not sure. I think it was just me praising their coffee so much that it kind of like established a relationship. But yeah, I'm just honestly, I'm a fan, and I'm lucky enough to be able to have contact with the provider. That's my side.
I was just gonna add to the story that you guys came to Lakeland. We don't have too many customers who actually come drive 5 or 6 hours just to see the roastery. So that definitely made an impression too.
Yes.
You know something? I've been in Florida, and I could never figure out how far away Lakeland is. I always knew it was far, but I didn't know how far it was.
Yeah, about 5 hours or.
I was just saying Lakeland is like a place of like where a lot of like farms and factories are for some reason. Like what is it? I think Publix their main facility is in Lakeland.
That's
It's
right.
it's a lot of places up there. Yeah,
Wow, I know
a
that.
lot of stuff comes from Lakeland.
That's awesome. Well, actually, tell us. You told us, but tell the viewers and Jeffrey, like, what made you settle down in Lakeland? Because I know you're from Guatemala and your partner is from Colombia, and you guys met in University of Florida, and it was a love story. But how did that love story come together in Lakeland?
Well, honestly, we traveled a lot when we were both studying and pursuing academic careers. So my husband, just for context, he actually went through med school, residency, and all of that stuff takes about 12 years of your life. I actually have a PhD in food chemistry, and I did an MBA after, just because I wanted to get more into the business side. And we had the idea for Ethos for a few years before being able to start it, mainly because we wanted to make sure that we were done with academics and everything, and one of us was able to have that steady job so the other one could take the risk and really give it 100%. So Florida was always our dream, kind of like our dream home. We always yearn about coming back here. We really loved it when we lived here originally. I think it's we're both immigrants, but this was the first place where we arrived. And we just love the warm weather, and yeah, just everything about it, all so much green. We think it's a really beautiful place. It also helps that cost of living is relatively low compared to other places. So when you're starting a business or thinking about finding a place, and you have all these expenses, and real estate or a place to rent is actually one of the main cost drivers, especially at the beginning. So that was also a really nice really nice plus about being in Florida.
Is that something that goes hand in hand with your coffee making business, or was that just like your degree and then you just realized that wasn't something that you wanted to pursue any further?
Oh no, I'm very passionate about food. I've been passionate about food my whole life. I was just a very picky child, very strange child as well, because I would read food labels ever since I learned how to read. And I would ask, the adults, oh, so what is this? What's the, monosodium glutamate? What's that? And of course they didn't know.
I kind of want to like retouch basis on the food chemistry aspect. Like, I'm sure, like Jeffrey, someone would say, like, how do you like go from food chemistry to like coffee brewing and all that? But I personally feel that when it comes to the coffee world, people only see the end product, like the lattes or like the finished brew. But especially dating a barista, I learned that coffee is a huge amount of science. Like, even for a barista, like there's applicable factors that apply scientific like traits, I guess, that can make or break your cup of joe. Like, for example, when it comes to espresso alone is a huge scientific art, because you have to consider pressure, temperature, humidity, hydration. I'm sure the complications of it go even up to the growing the coffee bean. What's your perspective on the world of meeting the farmers, bringing the bean to your roastery, and like, what's your experience with that?
So the reason that we picked coffee is I knew that I wanted to do something in food because I'm fascinated by food. And I also wanted to have a social impact. And the reason that I wanted to have a social impact is because I was in a corporate job. I actually graduated with my PhD and I went to work with Frito-Lay North America, which is a subsidiary of PepsiCo. So working on multi-million-dollar lines, producing tons, like literally tons and tons of chips, and looking at, some of our expert panels being comprised of people who were all morbidly obese and with lots of health issues. And I was just feeling terrible about myself. I was just feeling like I'm a really bad person because I'm making these chips so addictive, that it's really, really hard for people to stop eating them or not to eat them on a very regular basis. And this is having an effect on their health, and I can see it and I know it. So I wanted to go into a business that would have a different effect on people's lives, and hopefully turn my attention to, the country that I'm from, Guatemala. My husband is from Colombia, and I grew up, luckily I didn't grow up poor, but I definitely grew up being very surrounded by people who were definitely trapped in a cycle of poverty, and kind of like, there's this like lack of hope that things are gonna get better, and it's just a cycle, like people just kind of like grow up, they don't have an education, they get pregnant at age 12, and then now the kids kind of like grow up to kind of do the same and live on the streets or live in the farm and then just do subsistence agriculture or subsistence anything.
It's a nonstop cycle.
So yes, yeah, it's a nonstop, and it's really sad, and I always had it in the back of my mind, like I really need to do something to help them.
From the beginning and now, what decision did you make to like make that first transition to a better sustainable relationship with the grower and the buyer?
So, one of the things, or the main thing that we knew from the beginning that would make a huge difference in the lives of the farmers would be pay them a higher price, right? That it's just as simple as that. So you can have all kinds of programs, you can do all kinds of, all this percentage goes back for this particular, for education or for X or Y. But honestly, bottom line, what makes the biggest difference immediately in their lives is just having a bigger paycheck. What would happen in their lives if suddenly their paycheck got multiplied by 3 or by 4?
You work harder, you're motivated.
It's life-changing though.
Yeah.
You get your check triple, quadruple, it's life-changing.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's like,
suddenly you can do things you couldn't do before.
and it's quite literal, like the fruits of your labor. Like you're not like just trying to skim through whatever's left. You're actually seeing a return. Where also, as you mentioned it in your website, that allows for the farmers to like buy new equipment, provide for their families, and it just in the long haul, it's a short big investment for a larger gain for the whole unity of the industry.
That's right. And we don't, there's no strings attached to that money. So they are the ones that are deciding where to invest that money. And they are the ones who decided, you know what, we're going to make our operation more efficient. We're going to make our coffee better.
Another reason why I approached you guys for the coffee, you guys do something that not everyone advertises, which I think they should. You guys provide the location of the coffee, not just like the regional, but the actual farm itself. And you also provide the process information. So for some people that may not know, coffee has different ways to extract the bean from the fruit. And the most common is washed, which is through a bath solution that does all the work. And I remember a year before I found you guys, I discovered that, and I discovered that I love natural coffee. And what natural coffee is that you literally just, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you literally grab the cherries and you throw them somewhere and let them sun dry. It's a little bit more organized than that, I'm sure, but you're letting the sun do all the work. And in the process of that, you're creating fermentation. So you get more honey flavors and more like caramelized flavors. It's not just the flat nuttiness. But maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit more.
Yeah, so that's you actually described the natural process really well, where coffees are dried as a cherry. So basically you take the whole cherry, you dry it under the sun, and after it's dried, then you mill it and you kind of like bring it down to the seed. So that actually retains a lot of the sweetness from the fruit and more of the fruit flavors as well. So you can get a lot of like cherry flavors or, red fruits or that kind of thing. And then there's a process that's in between the washed and the natural that's called the honey process. And that basically entails partially removing the pulp and then drying the coffee under the sun. So you get a little bit of fermentation, but not as much as with the natural. So, and that also increases a little bit of sweetness, but it's going to be a little bit closer to the wash in terms of the cup profile. So it's going to taste more like coffee for most people, because that's the number one reason why some people just don't like naturals that much. And it's because it's a little bit, it's the most different from what they grew up knowing as coffee. So I guess it just depends on the person, because I also love naturals. So
there's a lot of misconception about coffee, right? So what would you say is one thing that is a misconception about coffee that actually is not?
Well, a lot of people think coffee is bad for you. And that's, like just health wise. And, my husband's a doctor. I'm pretty health conscious. We wouldn't have gotten into coffee if we really believed it would be detrimental to people's health, because that's something that I knew from the get-go that I wouldn't be able to work with a product like that. So that's a big misconception. I don't know how it came to be. I think some of the earlier studies that were conducted in coffee reported like heart palpitations and things like that. But those were with people that had some other conditions, so what they call comorbidities in health terms. So basically, they were also heavy smokers. A lot of people who like to smoke also happen to really like coffee. So a lot of those issues were actually driven by the smoking, not by coffee consumption.
The things that people don't always mention in their statistics is moderations. Like they either go extreme or not enough, but coffee has, at least from what I've heard in my experience, coffee in the right moderation, I think a cup a day can be very beneficial for that person. But if you have like 20 cups a day, then I mean, at that point you're pushing it.
Yeah. Actually, there's the current FDA recommendation is 3 to 5 cups a day, because
Really?
the studies that they've done is that's the most beneficial for a lot of things. So one of the things that is being really being looked at, it's the prevention of Alzheimer's disease. So coffee does make your mind more alert, and it, especially for as you get older, like coffee drinkers, people who have been drinking coffee their whole lives tend to have a lower incidence of Alzheimer's and dementia and those types of like degenerative brain diseases.
Society tells you like, okay, well, you have to drink coffee in the morning if you're like, you got to go work at a construction site, or you have a busy meeting and you don't want to have a drag. And then, yeah, it does also follow. Some people need a smoke break. They're like, oh man, I'm stressed out today, or they eat terrible. I'm a conscious eater as well. So hearing that about coffee, and that you have to at least drink at least 5 cups a day for it to actually.
Well, 3 to 5. So
3 to 5.
You're at
okay.
3. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, all right. You mentioning having a mission, because you are an entrepreneur. You started your own business and it looks to be really successful. And you said it's not just about having a profit. You wanted to make a socially impact of change with it as well, not just with how people go about what they perceive as coffee, but also what people make. What would you give advice to someone that is trying to be an entrepreneur, and words of advice towards having a mission in the process of what you're ultimately pursuing?
Well, I really think that finding or defining your mission should really be step one. So, well, you want to do something, think about how you can impact people's lives with that. Because honestly, it's not just about, like, well, it's going to help you make more money. It's going to help you, market your product maybe in a better way because you're going to resonate with more people. But I think probably the most important benefit of having a clear vision or mission and actually believing in that mission is that it's going to motivate you. It's going to motivate you the day that you feel like not doing anything. It's going to motivate you the day when you show up to, like a fair or an event and it just goes terribly, it's going to motivate you when you talk to 10 people and the 10 of them say no.
When was that moment that you felt that you were finally making a difference or an impact with your mission that you've been on for the last so many years?
That's a good question.
Well, I really remember it pretty vividly because it was last year, right before COVID hit us. So we did a trip to Guatemala to visit the cooperative that we've been working with since the very beginning. And I was able to contrast it with my very first trip there at the end of 2015. So that was the very first time that I visited them. And, the roads were just dirt roads, and it took us like an hour to get there because they were, in such bad shape. They were selling their coffee as a cherry. So they were selling it, just cherries by the pound. They had no idea how their coffee tasted or how good it was. And they were not organized as a cooperative. They were just kind of like selling to the intermediaries that are also called like coyotes. So basically, everybody was just selling to the coyotes. And we started talking about, this idea of them organizing under the cooperative so they could, so we could have enough coffee that we could at some point buy and send to the US and basically be something that would be worth their time, right? Worth their effort. So they started doing all that work and being able to 5 years later visit them and just see the transformation in their town. Like they actually have paved roads now, which is incredible because this is not something we did for them. This is something they did for themselves. So they started lobbying their local government saying, we need to get all this coffee out of here. Like, you're going to get this much taxes. Like, this is what you're losing because you're not giving us a road. And they would just go to all the meetings. Like, they would just be like so much like in their face that finally they just caved in. and said, okay, we're just going to pave you the road because you're too much to deal with.
It just takes one cobblestone at a time, as I say. And that little decision will eventually ripple out and build a road ahead that maybe we'll be able to see down the future, or maybe we don't. But at least we know we had an impact.
What is creativity to you?
Okay, so to me, creativity is expressing who you are in the way that you choose to. So it could be art, like traditional art, or it could also be a craft or a product. So before doing coffee, I was always in front of a computer, so everything was very abstract. And now I get to work with my hands and actually hold a product in my hands that I know I had a lot to do with, with creating. So it's just a totally different feeling. I think holding something, like making something that wasn't there, like a reality, I think that's the ultimate realization of human potential. Maybe, I don't know, but it might be very biased. But yeah, there's a feeling that you definitely don't get when you do spreadsheets all day.
Thank you, Lisbeth, for joining the show. And if you guys haven't found their coffee, check out Ethos Roasters in Central Florida. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of Simply Talk. Thank you guys for watching, and stay creative.